Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us for today's pre-arrival webinar, where we will be discussing student accounts and finances. My name is Grace Fuller. I serve as the Manager of International Student Experience and Engagement here at ISPO, the International Students and Programs Office. And I'm joined by two wonderful colleagues today, and I can hand it over. We can just go in order of the screen to introduce themselves.
Good morning, my name is Veronica Olvera. I work for Student Financial Solutions. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Pichia Vu, and I also work for Student Financial Solutions.
All right, a little housekeeping before we begin. So you are in listen-only mode, which means you can hear us, but we can't hear you. So the primary way we'll interact together is via the Q&A feature on your Zoom menu bar. If for some reason we don't get to the questions today, you can always reach out and contact us at icontact.ucsd.edu. And finally, we are recording. So you can watch this webinar recording as well as other previous webinar recordings at iwebinars.ucsd.edu and click on webinars for newly admitted students. That's just a friendly reminder of what that Q&A feature looks like. The chat has been disabled for attendees, so we might be sharing relevant links with you all via the chat, but again, all the way that you'll interact with us is through that Q&A feature. We do ask that you wait to ask some of your questions at the end because our colleagues are going to go through a lot of really good information today, but if there is a follow-up question you have, you can go ahead and submit that. Okay, so a little bit about an overview of today's agenda. I'll pass it over to my colleagues from Student Financial Solutions, and we'll talk about third-party payers, international payment options, how to avoid scams, and then we will have a designated open question and answer session for the end. But a few reminders from ISPO. So I'm sure many of you are familiar, but iNewStudent.ucsd.edu is our website created specifically for our incoming students. So here you can find important information about requesting your immigration documents and preparing for arrival. And it's very likely that if you do have any questions about how to request these documents, you'll be able to find the answers here on this website. We also have a feature called Ask Triton, and you can find that in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen when you go to iNewStudent. And that's also a helpful just navigation and search tool that if you have a question about something specific, you can go ahead and type that keyword into Ask Triton into that search bar, and that will point you to our website and where on our website it talks about those specific topics. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Veronica.
Thank you, Grace. So good morning and welcome to UCSD. Our office is Student Financial Solutions. We're located in the Student Service Center on the 3rd floor. Where a building has cashiers in it. Financial aid is also located in that building. So if you ever need to walk in, we are accepting walk-ins at this point. And so welcome. We'll hopefully you'll get a chance to stop by in our office. Next slide. So a little bit about our office. We have 3 units there in our office. Student account services and university billing is combined into one now. So Student Account Services provides all the support for account inquiries via SNO cases, which you'll find out later on. When you create, a case is created when you email our office. That way we can kind of track everybody that's coming in, asking questions, and from beginning to end, we will go ahead and close that case when everything has been provided to the students, so their inquiries have been responded to, and then we'll go ahead and close that case. And then university billing services, we send out the bills for the students, and matter of fact, for the whole university. So we send out billing statements for business partners as well. And then we have central cashier's office, which are responsible for our cash handling. All payments in person are made to the cashier's office. They are located on the 1st floor. We are located on the 3rd floor. There in our office as well, we have the loan administration office, which provides support for all campus-based loans. That would have been, if you've ever heard the old Perkins loan, university loans. So anything that the campus, any loans that the campus provides, the loan administration will provide an administrative, any questions or anything you have when you graduate, they're the ones that are handling those questions. We also have Campus Card, which you all at some point will visit our office for either a replacement or submitting a photo for a campus card. And this is your kind of your key to university. Next slide. There in our office, there's two very important things, one of them being an authorized payer. Students call our office as well as parents. When a parent calls, we ask them if they're an authorized payer. We look at a different screen to make sure that that's correct, to be able to speak on your behalf. So it's important because not everybody has the same relationship with parents, and we want to make sure that you are fully covered with any kind of laws that we have in order to give information to anybody besides the student. So becoming an authorized payer is super important when you have perhaps parents, grandparents calling our office to ask questions regarding your any kind of account activity. So it's really important. All of that stuff is on our website at sfs.ucsd.edu. Next slide. And there you have it. So going on to Triton Link, you can just go on to the actual portal, the Triton Link portal. There you'll find there's billing and payments. You can go on there and there's just a whole slew of information. There's links on there that are easy to follow. You just want to click on the authorized apparent payer. They can go in there. What ends up happening there is that an email is sent to their designated email address. They have that link and it's viable for 24 hours. They go in there and they create their own username and password for easy access to billing information. So at this point, only authorized payers will be able to see billing information, not so much grades, just all of the financial aspect of your career here at UCSD. Next slide. And then we also have there in our office, we process third-party contracts. So basically what this means is if your country is providing support for you to attend UCSD, we do have a designated person there in our office, David Park, that is he's responsible for assisting in filling out all of these financial guarantees. Normally, it's done 6 to 8 weeks prior to your arrival here at UCSD. So we want to make sure that all of that is set up prior to coming. What ends up happening is a contract set up onto your account, and then we bill the third party person, in a different way. So all of your fees are kind of paid for upfront, and then we worry about, the collection of that with the third party. Again, there's links there on our website for more information. Next slide. We also have, so the primary payment options. Normally we, ask for e-check, which is, the recommended form. It's a 50-cent service charge. Payments are posted to the account immediately. And then obviously US bank account is required. So if you don't have a US bank account and you're able to get that, that's probably the primary and recommended payment options. We also accept credit card via Triton Pay. There is a 2.75% service charge, but it's a form of payment as well. For international students, we have Western Union and Flywire. These tend to be a little bit more, the delay is there, 5 to 7 business days for payment to post. There is the service fee can vary depending on the country. And then we do not accept direct wire transfers. So Western Union and Flywire would be your best bet for international payments. Again, we have all of this information on our website. Next slide. Additional payment options, we always have that option of in-person. We are accepting walk-ins at the cashier's office at this time. We do accept cash, money order, personal checks, cashier's checks, and traveler's checks. Again, by mail, same order, cash, obviously we don't recommend cash. Money order, personal checks, cashier's checks, and traveler's checks. In the case that you're on campus and they've closed, there is a drop box and payments are processed by 2 p.m. the next business day. And then all payments must be made in US currency. When making a check to the university, always make sure that you include your PID and it needs to be made out to UC Regents. Next slide. There in our office, we also process scholarships. All scholarships should be reported to financial aid, the financial aid and scholarship office as part of any kind of financial support that you're receiving outside. So checks should, again, be made payable to UC Regents. Checks should include student's PID, 8-digit number that starts with an A. You probably should have that already. If checks need to be, if you have a check that's been mailed to you, you can drop it off at the cashier at our office at SFS or Student Financial Solutions, or you can put it into the cashier's drop box, eventually make its way up to our office where we process the check and send the information over to the financial aid office so they can pay out that money to you. So there's our address. Yeah, so you could just, like I said, you could mail it as well. Just mail it during the summer is our busy and peak time for processing scholarships for the fall quarter. And again, just remember that with all payments, it has to be there by the billing due date. And we do not accept postmarks at this time. Next slide. The other feature that I pointed out earlier is 2 pinpoints to the importance of just two things to take away today: authorized payer and direct deposit. So direct deposit would be for any student that either is receiving any kind of financial support or simply any kind of might be housing deposits or anything that might later on be returned to you. So direct deposit there in office is probably the fastest and safest way to get that money back into your checking account. So again, make sure that you have a US bank account. You can use your checking or savings account, and it's very easy to sign up via Triton link or our SFS website. Next slide. So unbeknownst to us, there was some tuition and housing scams that were going on. And of course, we found out by a simple call from a student saying, hey, I paid my bill, but it's not reflecting on my student account. So, a couple of things, just a reminder, as with all scams that are kind of going on right now, is just to make sure that you always protect your login credentials. Never share your information with anybody besides maybe your parents or family, someone that you really know, but no other third-party person. Nobody should call you and say, I can give you a discount on your tuition. If you pay us, we'll pay the school. Those payments never come to the school. Student ends up, owing the university with late fees. And, it's just a headache to have to go and investigate what's really going on, what happened, to come to find out that it was a scam, right? Someone took your money and they never sent the money to the university. So again, only those payments that we have kind of gone over and that are approved by UCSC should be accepted. Avoid solicitations, anybody calling against asking for your information. Nobody should know your PID or your PAC number, which is kind of your passcode to get into Triton Pay. You shouldn't be sharing that information. The other part was beware of WeHousing. Students were contacted by third-party companies, or this company, WeHousing, to pay deposits, to pay their rent, often received eviction notices because, it wasn't paid. So now you're kind of forced to pay because you get scared or you don't want to get kicked out of housing. Again, payments are never sent to the university. So that company keeps the payments and, never sends the money to the university. So you're kind of stuck to square one with still having that housing outstanding there or here at your, on your student account. And then again, don't be a victim. Any suspicious calls that you feel that are suspicious, asking for that information, hang up, contact UCSD police or notify ISBO, if you have, or your advisor, if you have any doubts that something is happening or that you feel that you're being scammed. Next slide. And then again, here is just our information. I apologize. Pop up. So again, just our office hours, Monday through Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 4. Thursdays we are closed and open till 10, or closed and open at 10 to 4. We are located in Student Service Center, Suite 355A, or 355-4, I'm sorry. and then phone number 858-822-4727. And then again, here at the bottom, you'll see the UCSD service and support portal. This is where you can go and create a case. If you have any questions, that case will follow you all the way through till it's answered. So all of that stuff is on our website, again, at sfs.ucsd.edu. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So I have a few last reminders of different ways that you can get involved before we head to our open question and answer session. So for our undergraduate students, I highly encourage you to sign up for our Global Ambassador Program. So our Global Ambassador Program is a peer mentorship program that occurs over the summer, where you'll get matched with a current undergraduate student at UC San Diego, and you can, in the form, kind of indicate what you would like out of a mentor. So maybe that's a GAP mentor who's from the same home country as you, maybe in the same college or sharing the same major. So I'll go ahead and drop that link into the chat. But I would really encourage you to go ahead and apply to be a GAP mentee for the summer. And here is that link. So that's for our undergraduate students. And then for our graduate students, we have the Grad Pals program. So it's very similar. It's a summer mentorship program, peer mentorship program, where incoming graduate students would be matched with current graduate students at UC San Diego. Most commonly within the same department, usually our students kind of want a lay of the land and to meet people in their department. So if you're interested for our grad students, go ahead and sign up via Grad Pals. I just shared that link in the chat. And for both of these programs, you can expect to receive your match in June. And then finally, I do want to share that we have just finished our Surf Check guide for this year, for 2022. So our Surf Check Coming to UC San Diego guide is essentially this guide designed to help you as you transition to UC San Diego. So it covers everything from what to pack, or what important visa documents or immigration documents should you have on you when you travel, emergency contacts for when you travel, transportation options from getting from the airport to campus. A lot of really helpful getting set up in the US. So setting up a US bank account, a US phone number, things like that. So I went ahead and I shared the Surf Check guide link into the chat, and we hope you'll take a moment to check it out. Okay, so a few important deadlines and reminders. So again, you can start applying or requesting your visa documents via iPortal now, as well as this is a time that we really encourage students to apply for on-campus housing. Then starting June 1st, you will have access to iTriton. And iTriton is an online international orientation on Canvas. And so it's the first part of your international orientation requirements. So students will have access to iTriton essentially all summer. So June, July, August, and then it's due at the beginning of September. It's due on September 6th. You'll receive an email from Canvas about iTriton on June 1st, but you can always visit iTriton.ucsd.edu to learn more. Additionally, we do have our health requirements for incoming students, and those are all due July 11th. And you can go ahead and visit the link on the screen in terms of what those health requirements are and additional information about them. And then we're very excited to welcome you at new International Student Orientation in September. So we will have iTriton due September 6th. We'll have International Student Session September 7th, 8th, and 9th. And then we'll have International Welcome Programming the 10th through the 24th. So there's a lot of exciting, good stuff. And you can learn more about those things at iorientation.ucsd.edu. Okay, so now we will go to our open question and answer. A small note is, again, if we don't get to any questions here, you can always contact us via iNewStudent.ucsd.edu. So that's not only a website, but also an email for specifically designed for our incoming students. And then we hope you'll engage with us on social. So our office is really active on Instagram specifically, and I think we're going to be hosting some giveaways soon, specifically for our incoming students. So yes, if you follow us, our handles across platforms are at ispo.ucsd.edu, and we do have some fun filters that we've been creating to celebrate our new Tritons. So yes, the giveaway might have something to do with that. Sneak peek. All right, I see that there's a lot of really good questions in the chat. So I'll go ahead and speak to some of them, and then I'll hand it over to my colleagues, as I know they've also already been answering a lot of good questions. So I see one question that's come through that asks about, if I'm paying using a private student loan, does that make me a sponsored student, as in a J1 visa? So I think the important thing to know about the difference between a J1 and an F1 visa is where the majority of your funding is coming from. So if you or your family, so your personal funds essentially, are paying for the majority of the funding, so over 50%, those funding requirements align with the F1 visa, and a private student loan would be considered your own personal funding. For a J1 visa, a sponsored student, it's a third party is paying. So like maybe your home government or an NGO. If more than 50% of your funding is coming from a third party, that would be a J1, but again, a private student loan is still considered your personal funds. And so you can find more information about our funding requirements. I actually can go ahead and drop that link in the chat, and that's helpful in terms of learning more about the differences between the J1 and the F1, as well as funding requirements. All right. I also see that there's some questions regarding, so the dates for on-campus orientation for international students. So what's important to note is that, so there's 3 pieces to international orientation: iTriton, the sessions, and then the welcome programming. For iTriton and the sessions, and this is all found at iorientation.ucsd.edu. But for iTriton and our international orientation sessions, those 2 components are mandatory and completely virtual, because we understand that a lot of our students are traveling during the month of September, right? And so even if you are in transit, you can still meet those requirements. Whereas welcome programming will be hybrid, so there will be virtual and in-person programming, and that is optional but strongly recommended. So for our welcome programming, we do things like our international mixer, where you can meet international students from all over the world. We do our UC San Diego bus tour, where you explore San Diego. So we highly encourage students to check out our international welcome programming. But again, you can find more about all of that information at iorientation.ucsd.edu. All right, so I see some good questions. Okay, so I see some questions about health requirements. So for all questions about health requirements, one, we did have a pre-arrival webinar focusing on student health, immunization, and insurance requirements. So I'd highly encourage you to check that out at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. That answers a lot of questions. But if you have any follow-up questions, we encourage students to ask, to go into your My Student chart, because that's the most secure way to talk about your health information, and utilize the Ask a Nurse function. Again, that's the most protected way to talk about your health information and get your questions answered regarding these health requirements. And with that, I'll hand it over to Veronica and Pachia in terms of, are there any questions that are coming through the chat that you feel like would be, or the question Q&A feature that you feel like would be helpful to answer aloud for the benefit of the group?
Well, I just wanted to go over, we do have, I saw 2 questions on there that I think might just be easier to, I know Pachia had replied to one regarding TRIP. So TRIP is a Triton registration installment plan. It's the only payment plan we have, or option that we have there on campus. And it takes your tuition and fees only, divides that into 3 installments, which the first would be due September, with the September due date. I think it's September 22nd, I think. I might be wrong, don't quote me on that due date. So your first payment would be due when the tuition payment is due for everybody. And then you have 2 subsequent payments, October and November. So it takes your total registration and fees, divides it into 3 equal payments. And there's a $40 charge for that. So I just wanted to kind of point that out there. You can apply for it on our website or through Triton Link, and billing and payments, I think, is the option. And then just follow the link on how to apply for it.
All right, I see another good question in the chat or the Q&A feature. Is there going to be a separate orientation for your programs? And the answer is yes. So if you are an undergraduate student, you are an undergraduate international student, you are required to attend 2 orientations. So international orientation and your college orientation, be that Mirror, Warren, etc. You probably have already received information regarding Compass, which is the first part of your college orientation. So for undergrad, it's going to be international orientation and your college orientation. For our graduate students, you have somewhat 3 orientations. So for our graduate students, you're going to attend international orientation. The Office of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs, that was previously called Graduate Division, has their own Canvas orientation. And then your department or your program might have its own orientation, and that depends. So you would need to check in with your department to see if they have a specific orientation for your program. So again, for your graduate students, you're going to want to make sure you complete international orientation, the orientation from Office of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs, and your department or for your program. All right. So we have a question that's come through the Q&A feature for my colleagues, and the question reads, are tuition payments done through direct fellowships with the university automatically paid, or is it on the student responsibility to do so?
So with fellowships, normally it's set up from your department to the Office of Graduate Studies. So between those 2 offices, they speak. That fellowship is then sent directly to your student account, and the fees are paid at that point. So there's nothing the student has to do other than kind of the follow-up work to make sure that it's getting done. At times, it kind of gets lost through all the students that they're processing. So you just want to follow up with your department to see when that will happen. It usually happens around the middle of September or so.
We have another question for Student Financial Solutions, and this question reads, is there any way by which my bank can directly pay the fees, as I will be taking a loan from the bank?
Yeah, so the way it works, that would be kind of it's not really a private loan, but it is a loan that's coming through your bank. Normally that all happens and is funneled through the financial aid office. So it's best to speak to them on what needs to happen. Normally they need to get that loan certified to make sure that you are taking classes there at UCSD. And so just make sure that I think the best option would be to speak to the financial aid and scholarship office to see what's the best way to get it to the university. A check could be mailed to our office. Again, we process as we would with a scholarship, send the information over to the financial aid office, and they will pay that money out into the student's account.
All right, I see some questions about the bus tour. So that's, again, that will be posted on our iOrientation website. And then be sure to check your iNewStudent newsletters. You have been receiving them up until this point, but we put all new information of when something becomes available, and we usually communicate that via iNewStudent newsletters. So that's a great place to make sure you're reading those as thoroughly as possible. All right, can you suggest the best way to travel from LA for international students? So for traveling, I know a lot of our international students do fly into LAX. So we actually have a section on our Surf Check guide that talks about different transportation options getting from the airport, whether that be LAX or the San Diego International Airport, to campus. So again, that Surf Check guide is in the chat, and I would encourage you to check that out. We have another good question, that do the financial statements submitted for the I-20 be the same ones that you show for your F1 visa interview? So they should line up exactly. You are issued an I-20 based on those documents with the assumption that these would be the same ones you would use for your F1 visa interview. So it's really important that, yes, to the best of your ability, those would be the exact same. And if something's different, you can always reach out via iNewStudent.ucsd.edu to ask about any clarifying questions. So we have another question for ISPO. How many days does receiving the Form I-20 application approval process take? So our office is experiencing hundreds, if not thousands, of requests from students right now. So we do ask for your patience as we are processing hundreds of Form I-20 applications. So the process can take 10 to 15 business days. And if you log into iPortal, it should say the due date for your I-20 application. So we do ask for your patience. That's why we really encourage students to submit that Form I-20 or DS 2019 application as soon as possible, really sooner rather than later, so that you have a lot of time and then can schedule your visa interview appointment. All right, so we have another question regarding for family sponsors, can I have multiple relatives sponsoring me? So it is possible for you to share, you can have in your funding documents, funding from different family members or relatives. And it's helpful typically if you include just like their relation to you or a letter of support from them saying, I'm willing to provide these funds for so-and-so's education. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to email any like specific or follow-up questions to iNewStudent.ucsd.edu. And then we have another question regarding, will the I-20 be an e-copy or a physical copy? So thankfully, SEVP, the Student Exchange and Visitor Program, has changed their system to issuing electronic I-20s, which is wonderful. I think it makes everyone's life easier. So the I-20 will be issued to you electronically, and then you'll go ahead and print it and sign it for your visa interview. For our J1 students, the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, is still doing physical copies for the J1 visa for the DS 2019 form in order to get the J1 visa. So if you're an F1 student requesting an I-20, that will be an e-copy. If you're a J1 student requesting a DS 2019, that will be a physical copy. For folks, so we often have students who fly into LAX and San Diego. It really depends on you. It really depends on, depending on where you're flying from, what is the availability between LAX and between San Diego, and then what's the cost differential between flying to LAX and flying to San Diego. For some of our students, it's much cheaper and for them to fly to LAX and then come to San Diego. For other students, it's worth it to fly into San Diego and to not have to navigate so many barriers to then you're already in San Diego to get to campus. So it really depends on you and your specific situation. We have a lot of students who fly into both LA or San Diego. So we do have another question for our colleagues in Student Financial Solutions of what is the conversion fee if we pay through Flywire?
Honestly, I think it varies. So they would have to, they would get that fee once they initiate that Flywire payment.
All right, so we do have some questions regarding, oops. Sorry, I'm realizing someone shared that the link for the funding requirements, there was a typo. So let me go ahead and share that correct link in the chat with you now. Okay, that should be the correct link for those funding requirements. Awesome. And then in terms of like follow-up questions regarding your I-20, so paying for the I-20 or date of signing the I-20. So again, a lot of those questions are actually answered at iNewStudent.ucsd.edu. And then you'll click on whatever, so if you're a graduate student, you'll click on graduate students. If you're undergrad, you'll click on undergrad, and you can find a lot of those answers. And then if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email iNewStudent@ucsd.edu. But and then you can always use the Ask Triton feature if you have a specific question and have a hard time. I also see a question about when showing proof of funding while requesting the I-20, can stocks be a part of the fund? And so actually that question is answered in terms of the funding requirements. There's a section called what financial documentation is accepted. So I encourage you to go through and read that website, as there's a lot of questions that are answered there. All right, are there any other last questions or reminders in terms from our students from Student Financial Solutions of questions that are coming through the Q&A that you would like to kind of remind folks or read out loud for our students?
Looks like I saw one twice. Can I apply for an on-campus job as a GSR?
Yeah, so we actually had a pre-arrival webinar called Graduate Student Funding that goes into a lot of detail regarding on-campus jobs as well as working as a GSR. So I'd encourage you to watch that webinar, and that will not only provide some answers to those questions as well as give you the contact information for the best folks to ask any follow-up questions to. So again, that's our pre-arrival webinar that talks about graduate student funding, and I can go ahead and put the link to all of our pre-arrival webinars recordings in the chat. In terms of if you get your, so in terms of once you land, getting access to housing, so that is a question for housing specifically. So you're going to want to reach out to housing. So you can go to hdh.ucsd.edu and then find your contact information. It might be hdh grad housing at ucsd.edu for graduate students. Same for undergrad. There's I think it's UG housing at hdh.edu. So I would definitely encourage you to reach out to HDH regarding move-in and those processes. So we have another question in the chat for folks in Student Financial Solutions. So the question reads, when should we be expecting the fees for a special start program, for example, a master's in business analytics? And also, is there a possibility to pay per quarter?
I think Chia's answering the one about tuition and fees. I guess, what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I know that we're all answering a lot of questions and typing the answers in the Q&A. So I think it's specifically for a special start program, like in Rady. So a master's in business analytics. So when can the student be expecting the fees for that special start program, the MBA? And can they also pay per quarter?
Yeah, so it is, everything that we bill is billed per quarter. So we bill in September for fall, in March for spring, and then in January for winter. Oh, I'm sorry. So September, and then January, and then March. So fall, winter, spring. But yeah, it's all billed quarterly anyway. That's already been, that's just how we bill. Within those quarters, they can also apply for TRIP, which would then break it up into months. So September, October, November, if need be, for those quarters.
And I will say that, so for our students, there's a lot of different programs at UCSD. And so a lot of the times, some of this more specific information is found by asking your program. So like if you are a Rady student, asking Rady is a really good source. If you're a GPS student, I'll go ahead. I see that there is a question about this. So again, the funding requirements actually has a link as well in terms of if you go to the funding requirements, there's a drop-down menu for undergraduate students, graduate students, Rady school programs, GPS, other MAS degrees, and for spouse and child. So that's a really great resource for our students, and it has a lot of information there. All right, we have gotten through all of our questions for today. Again, this webinar will be posted at the link I just shared in the chat. So hopefully that this was helpful for you. We're so excited to welcome you to UC San Diego, and we've shared our contact information. You can always reach out to us in the meantime. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.